Okay, I am back on. I'm hoping that we're good. Yeah. Okay.
No, what happened?
Okay.
Okay, so I
Look.
took my headset off because I'm wondering if that's also part of it. Can you hear me?
Yep. Hmm.
Okay. All right. I'll just have to make it work this way. Maybe that, because sometimes I wonder if maybe it's that my headset.
Who knows? I don't even use headsets because there's always some weird stuff happens to me. So
Yeah.
I don't even use them. But you sound good and you're not pixelating.
Okay, then
So,
I may have to lean in to hear your question because for whatever reason it doesn't activate my speaker, but it's cool. We can make it work.
all right. Okay. Our topic today for World Creativity and Innovation Day is balancing life as a multi-passionate creative. And I have a multi-passionate creative. And thank you, y'all, for joining, coming right on back and working with us today. I'm Sharon Burton. If you don't know me, I am the founder of Spark Your Creative Coaching. Some people might know me from when I did a lot of art curation, and I was an art advisor, um, an art curator, and all that in the Washington, D.C. area. And Kat and I have known each other since those days for over 10 years, I guess now, right? Something like that.
Yep.
It's been a long time. It's been a long time. This is my girl right here, though. She's always supported me in all my iterations, and this is my girl right here. And I just want to introduce Arisikat Okade. Am I saying that right? Okay, I spent 10 years trying to learn how to do.
Listen, I have Nigerians tell me that I even say my own name incorrectly, so I can't even, I can't argue. Like it's a good effort. So well done.
All right, all right. So you know, um, she is a self-defined cultural architect. And I love that phrase. Because I think I consider myself that to a certain degree, but I think she really takes the cake. She she is just an artistic and cultural goddess. That's all I can say about her. she, she she has managed and engaged in a variety of musical theater, all kinds of cultural venues. She's done programs at the Kennedy Center. She's done programs at some of the cultural centers around town and across the country. She has managed a lot of musical acts. She has come up with a variety of different conceptual programming, one of which I was very much involved with, which I wish would come back. But
I'm
I
working.
know,
I'm
yeah,
working on.
yeah, which was a wonderful production that we did, focusing on the Harlem Renaissance. Oh God, when was that? That was at least 10 years ago,
It was
right?
at least 10 years ago when Harlem came to Paris. Yeah, we did it 3 times and sold a lot of art the third time, which was amazing.
Yes, yes. I was the art dealer. Many of us were in character.
Yes.
And that was one of my favorite projects I've done in the last 10 years. I'll have to admit that. And we had a lot of fun together working on all kinds of different things. And, the DC area has changed so much. But, we have evolved and moved forward in different things. Um, Kat has also gone into visual art more. You've always been a fan of that, but you're doing panel discussions at Martha's Vineyard. I was like, whoa. um,
Oh,
with
God.
the art crowd in Martha's Vineyard. But she's always been very grounded, very popular in the DC area. It's very popular in across the country pretty much now because of your work in so many different areas, particularly around progressive Black culture. And I'm very, very happy and proud to be your friend and for you to be on this tonight. So um,
Woo.
we're part of this mutual admiration society. What I am talking about today, and as part of World Creativity and Innovation Day, is about being multi-passionate creatives. And as a multi-passionate creative myself, and with Kat having, ever since I've known her, she's been multi-passionate, but I think you're even more now because you're involved with all kinds of stuff.
Yes, yeah. It's there's some new stuff on the horizon. Yes.
Oh, I know it is. I know it is. She has gotten into visual art, y'all. I have to say this. We both are, well, I've been a visual artist all my life, and I've been exhibiting. We exhibited at a recent exhibition, and when I saw her work, I was just floored. I was trying to get it, and I didn't move too fast. I didn't move fast enough to get your work, but I commissioned a piece.
And it's
With,
coming. I haven't forgotten. It's coming. I
okay,
finally found the
all
right
right.
thing. There was mistakes. I got you.
All right. I just put that out there.
I
I
listen.
commissioned the
Message
piece.
received. Yes, yes, big system. Message received.
I commissioned the piece, and But anyway, so we're going to talk a little bit about that because I have clients have told me, Sharon, I'm involved with all kinds of different things. I'm not. I feel overwhelmed. What do I focus on? All that kind of stuff. And so I thought this would be a good way to talk to someone who does it all the time and does it without looking like she's breaking out into a sweat. So we're going to try to find out, how does she do it? Um, so how about this? Tell me, just share with everyone who may not be familiar with you some of the things you have going on and what
Right
you've
now?
been working on. Yeah, not
Okay.
your announcement, not your new stuff, but just what you've been doing now, because we're going to
Okay.
get to.
So good evening, everyone. Thank you again, Sharon, for doing this because it's interesting. I'm a producer, so I'm always in the background. I love interviews. I love talking to people, but it's always fun to be on this side because I don't really get a chance to kind of talk about what I do. So this is great. So thank you for that. Um, so I think the best way to, because I get asked this all the time, like, how do you do it? And I used to have like tongue-in-cheek answers, but I realized I'm an eldest daughter of of Nigerian parents, and anybody who's an eldest daughter already knows what that means in terms of like you are born into having a lot of responsibility and having to multitask fairly or unfairly in terms of taking care of your siblings, making sure other things are happening. So I do attribute some of the way that I move to kind of it's kind of a birthright. I am a professor, so I am full time at Prince George's Community College. I had to rep my school tonight. I love teaching at community college. I have the best time teaching at community college. It's I once had to check somebody who's well known because he tried to make a joke about community college. I was like, don't do that. But I take it very seriously, and I really enjoy working with students and specifically working with them in terms of writing and teaching African American literature. So that's what my academic background is in African American history and literature and African literature actually. I also adjunct at Bowie State University, so that's been an amazing experience of just being able to work with students. And what I teach there is self promotion and marketing. So I teach students on how to brand themselves, and we get to have the most amazing time trying to figure out like what's the thing about your personality and what you're doing that's going to help you kind of sell yourself out in the world after you get this degree. I have a company, Los Oso Productions. I've been operating that blicky since 2004, and
Mhm.
it is named for my little sister Sophie, who died about that time. And I knew I was going to do something. I knew it was event related, but I had no idea that my life was going to become this smorgasbord of creativity. I always tell the story that one of the things, like when you're a child of immigrants, your parents tell you that they didn't come all this way to this country for you to be out here doing all kinds of foolishness. So I was always creative, but it was very clear growing up that that was not something that I could do. I was I'm Nigerian. I'm supposed to be a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, something sensible. So I remember my dad taking me to lunch. He's like, I have to talk to you. And I was like, why? I said, what? He said, well, your mother says you're dressing like an artist. What's going on? And there was this concern because because I was a weird kid. I just would throw stuff on. I didn't care. I would just be like out there in the streets. I wore hair nets for like a whole summer. I was just like, eh. And it drove my mother crazy. She was this big fashionista woman. Diana Ross was one of her fashion idols. And here I am, like in cut up jeans and like hats, and she's confused as to what the hell's going on. And so my dad was like, what is this artist thing you're doing? No, we can't do this. And so it was ingrained in me that I couldn't be an artist. So I didn't really understand that I was showing up that way. I just knew that I liked things that were a bit different. I was born in DC, but we grew up in Miami. I hated living in Miami. Everyone always thought I was from New York. So it was just this weird juxtaposition where I'm living in a place where there's no relief from the damn heat. There's no seasonal change. And I'm like, this is just, I don't like this. So once I got a chance to sort of go out and find other things, I did. And I think that, I have a family where my mom and my dad had multiple streams. Like my dad was an airline mechanic. I'm still convinced he was a secret agent because that's a whole thing that we like to talk about. Because he was like, I'm like an airline mechanic, but you never have oil in your hands. I don't know what that's about. But then he also sold real estate. My mother was an LPN. She worked in hospitals and nursing homes, but she always had, at some point she decided she wanted to have a stall at the flea market. And so she was very committed to these passion projects. My mother actually was one of the first, might have been the first person in Miami to bring a Nigerian film to Miami.
Oh, really?
And she screened it for 3 days at Philip Michael Thomas, if anybody remembers that actor from Miami Vice. He had a theater. So long before Magic Johnson had a theater, Philip Michael Thomas had like an art house theater in Miami. And my mother was screening Nollywood films. Huh. And I didn't understand the bigness of that. Right. I just knew that that's what my mom did. Huh. She wanted to have a flea market stall. That's what she did. If she wanted to, we would have, Nigerians and parties. It's kind of, they go hand in hand. My mother would whip up an outfit. I've already worn that. I have to have something else. And like, so I lived with a woman who was extremely creative from this very practical space. So anybody who's ever read In Search of Our Mother's Gardens by Alice Walker knows exactly what I'm talking about. Like Black women in particular are super creative. Mm-hmm. They don't make money from it. They don't get sort of raised up as artists, but that's what they are. So I think a lot of who I am, and it's funny now that I'm older and I'm sort of thinking about things and just kind of, I see a lot of my mother in me. Like I'm looking more like her as I age. I feel like I'm looking more like my mother. And so there are moments where I catch myself. I'm like, okay. And then I remember like, oh shit, mom did she screened the Nollywood film. I remember because I was helping her with the tickets. And because it was in Yoruba and there were no subtitles, I couldn't follow it. So I stayed outside and I made sure everybody paid. And Philip Michael Thomas actually came to the theater that day. So I got a chance to meet him. There's a picture somewhere. Wow. Yeah. So there's always been, it's weird. It's always been a creative space, like a creative aspect of my household, but nobody called it artistry. Nobody said, oh, this is art. So I didn't grow up thinking that what I did was creative. I just thought it was an extension of my personality.
It's interesting that you talked about like your dad, because my story with creativity was, I was doing art, ever since I was 3 or 4, and wanting to go, and I didn't show up like an artist, but my spirit was very much an artist, very empathetic, very highly sensitive, and I viewed things from an artist perspective. I just knew I was a little different in more ways than one. And I remember saying how I wanted to go to art school, and my dad finally had to sit us down and say,
Like, wait
"That's
a minute.
nice. You could do that on the side, but
Right,
we need you to go to school. If basically, if I'm going to pay for it, you know, you need to do something else."
right,
And so, and for years you kind of feel some kind of way about it, but then, I was like, well, when we came up in the 80s, in the 90s, early 90s, nobody was talking about art as
right,
a profession. It wasn't glamorized like it is now. These kids, they're told, oh, you can do whatever you want. You want to go to art school? Sure, go to art school. And nobody was doing that then. I came out of school in the late 80s, and it was about science and business and
right.
medical. You didn't do any of this stuff. So, you know flash forward, we're back to it now. But
Yeah,
you've really developed a lot with that. And you were also blessed to have someone that, even though you weren't aware of what it was,
right.
it was modeled for you, which I think is wonderful. So the things that you do now, you do everything from writing, right? You do a lot of writing.
I
You
do.
have a wonderful newsletter. She has this awesome e-newsletter, y'all, that I love, particularly if you're in the DC area. She talks about all these different cultural events that are going on, particularly in the Black community, but there are some
Oh,
overlap.
specifically, let's not mince words. My whole thing is about centering Blackness.
Okay.
That's
Centered
it's not
Black
even particular. Like, I am intentional about. It's about Black people,
focus.
Black communities with an S, diasporic, all of that. Like, that's who I live for. I ride for Black women first, and then everybody else. But Black people, yes.
Because I understand. I'm with you. Anyway, it's a wonderful e-newsletter. I find out
Thank
about stuff. Matter of fact, I did not know that she was curating an art show until I happened to look at it. And like sometimes you get so many emails. And one day I looked at it, and that's when I found out you were doing The Longest Night
Yeah,
over at Montpelier Art Center, which is north of the city of Washington, D.C. And I was like, what? Because because when I'm on Instagram and all that stuff, I do my thing and then I roll out. I don't tarry too long. There's too many people. It's too much.
right.
And I was like, sometimes it takes a concentrated thing like an email to get what I'm watching. And I was like, she's curating art now. Oh my God, I have to see it. And so my girlfriend and I went to see your show,
Yeah,
which was number one, it hit me because, I'm into the whole moon thing. Those that
yeah.
know me well, crystals, moon, woo woo. Yes, that's part of who I am. And I do a lot of my planning, whether it's business or otherwise, based on the phases of the moon.
Yeah.
And those of us that are part of that circle know all about it. So that whole longest night thing really caught my eye. And then second, I'm like, wow, I've always wanted to curate at Montpelier. I never got a chance to be, but my little side card came out and I was like, I got to see this show. And I love that. I love the image that you used in the posters and everything. But you're doing the visual art. I know you were doing you were up in, and we talked about Martha's Vineyard. You've been working with, what's the name of the outfit?
Oh, Art on the Vine.
Art on the Vine.
Yeah.
You were doing interviews and of some of the visual artists there and talking about their stories. What else you got going on?
Well, I mean, so I'm part of there's a cohort called the Culture Caucus, and I was selected 3 years ago to be part of this Culture Caucus that is part of the Kennedy Center Reach program.
Yeah.
And it was an honor to sort of even get that message because nobody applied. We just got an email that says congratulations. And I was like,
Oh,
is this a joke? And so I had to call some people. I'm like, is this a joke? And they were
yeah.
like, no, you've been selected. And so we are the inaugural group. And because of the pandemic, it was supposed to be 2 years and they've extended it for a year. So I'll be doing some more programming this summer at the Kennedy Center. As a result of that, this is why I was asked to curate some of the Millennium Stage while they worked to get a permanent person for the programming space once the long-term person had moved on. And so what I will say about my multiple passions is that it puts me in a lot of different spaces. And what I do have in like in excess is social currency. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of people understand the importance of social currency. I don't think a lot of people understand how valuable social currency is. And because I'm not an asshole, I've been able to maintain, depends who you talk to, but for the most part, I'm not an asshole. So what happens is I have people that I've built relationships with over the years
Yeah.
who, because the thing about being multi-passionate that I really wanted to make sure we talked about tonight is that
Mm-hmm.
it opens it's a very different way to live when you're multi-hyphenated, and not on purpose. My
Right.
love first and foremost is for Black people and Black culture. I do
Right.
feel like that is part of my sort of soul contract, that I'm
Mm-hmm.
supposed to remind everybody of the flyness of Black people.
Right.
I, having this triple identity, being born here with immigrant parents, and sort of riding these fences all the time about in terms of culture. I have a different viewpoint of how Black culture as a whole works, and specifically, how African American culture intersects with other things. And so
Right.
what I'm doing is chasing culture. And when
Mm-hmm.
people ask you what is a culture architect, I'm like, well, it's whatever I build whatever I need to build to get the work to get that message out. So I'm not necessarily going out of my way to curate exhibitions or to like produce stage shows. What happens is that in order for me to get my message across, or in order for me to tell a story, I have to use whatever medium makes the most sense. And if
Right.
that is an exhibition, then cool. If that means I'm directing a video, that's cool too. If it
Mm-hmm.
means I sit on a board and I make sure that they got Black people in the room, then I do that. But because Black people are my mission and Black culture is my mission, whatever I need to do to make that happen, I do. And it doesn't occur to me that I can't. So I just do. Like, low key, my answer to a lot of like people, why, how, this, that, I just say Benjamin Franklin. Like, this was a white man who could be whatever he wants. Like, if you go read Benjamin Franklin's biography, he's a multi hyphenated person.
Yes, it is.
He
Yes,
didn't
yes.
necessarily have the best formal education, but he's like like people took this man seriously. He could walk around butt naked, taking air baths, and he could fly kites and shit. And he's out here, inventing things and,
Sure.
doing all of
Sure.
these things. And people like, Ben, let's talk to you. We need to know what you think about this. Why? I don't know why. But nobody questions Ben Franklin being all of these things. No one ever asks, well, how do you get to be all of these things?
Right.
So that's kind of how I roll. Like, people are surprised sometimes when I end up in spaces that they don't expect to see me in. But I was like, in general, no one should be surprised if I end up in a space that you shouldn't be surprised if I roll in somewhere, because my social currency is how I got there. For example,
And,
the longest night, Gina Lewis, who is a colleague at Bowie State, she was asked to curate it, and she was like, I know the perfect person for this. So she was like, you need to go and talk to this person. She gave my information to Alan, who was the director,
mm,
and we went. I didn't
mm.
know. I was like, listen, I can't hang art, but I know what I want and I know what the order should look like. And so we had this really great collaborative thing. A lot of times people just trust and know that if you put me in, I'm going to do whatever needs to be done. But
And
that
that
happens over time. Yeah.
does. And I think the social currency definitely is a big thing. Um, And I've always admired how you've been able to maintain so many different relationships, and it has really done, you've done well with that. And I think it's great that you're also in higher education and really teaching these young people how to do it and how to do it correctly.
Right.
You don't have to harm people. You don't have to get over on anybody. You just have to be ethical
Right.
and fair and show them that what you say you can back it up with what you do.
Right.
And I think we need a lot more of that. And I've learned so much from you just watching you, because I mean, I'm a straight up introvert. You know, it takes me a while, and I connect with people based on vibes, you know, and it's just interesting because you've always been so extroverted, you know, and we've always had a way of kind of connecting well. And I've had a lot of respect for what you do, and I feel that respect back to me.
Absolutely.
And it's not always the case with people, you know, and I've always said to myself, wow, I probably should have handled that better. But we learn in time, you know, and you have to, you know, some of us are just a little bit more in tune to those things. So I think one of the things as a multi-passionate creative that we're learning from Kat tonight is one is, you know, really having a sense of social currency within your capacity to do so, because not everybody is able to move and shake, you know,
Yep.
but relationships are important. And as you get into different circles, being able to work those relationships effectively, not only to be able to maybe have access to certain things, but also for support. One thing about Kat has always had mega support ever since I've known her. And yes, you know, I think that her unique personality and background has lent itself to be a cultural influencer, um, and has, you know, and you know, I laugh because I said to myself, you know, she's right. I should not be surprised about where she ends up because she she just but the thing is I get so excited where she ends up because I'm always like, you don't always know it though. I see your name on stuff and I'd be like, yeah, mm-hmm.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
hmm And I was very thrilled to see that you were part of the Kennedy Center and doing some work there. Have a lot of respect for the Kennedy Center. And I had noticed the Millennium stage had kind of changed a little bit. I was like, whoa, there's some interesting acts over there. I mean, I was really like super impressed, but I didn't know that, you know, I didn't know all the behind the scenes. So now I know. Now I know what's up.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if an institution is like, hey, we got some money and we got a budget, we need
Work.
you to help us get some acts. Y'all know who was going to first, like, period. You know, I don't even, I pull people out of the closet, out of the dust, like, yo, you try to perform because here's an opportunity. I
But
think that I do want to
you,
say I am technically I'm an introvert. I know that surprises a lot of people, but I am. I'm an introvert in the sense that I'm not necessarily powered by all of this. I'm powered when I'm home by myself and I, you know, burn my incense and play my train sounds. That's really where I'm able to like get a lot of energy. But there is and it's funny because I think my mother, if she had lived long enough to kind of see me in this space, would be so completely shocked because I've always been very shy. Um,
mm,
it was in college that I watched. I don't know if anybody remembers fashion TV used to be a thing. Used to be one of the channels on the cable. And so when I was in college, was living with house full of roommates, and we would watch fashion TV. And this is no shade, but this is how my brain works. I watched a show that featured Vera Wang's designs, and
mm,
it was a beautiful show. And I'm not a fashion person, so I didn't realize how big a deal Vera Wang was at the time, but she's a big deal. And she comes out after the show, and this woman looks like she hasn't slept in 3 weeks.
mm,
She's like, you go get these bags, and I'm gonna come out here, do my little wave, and turn around and go back. And in that moment, I was like, I want to be that person
mm,
who is who it doesn't matter what she's looking like, who it doesn't matter what she's wearing or doing, that literally she's the reason why this entire show exists because she's back there making sure things happen. And I think in that moment it kind of clicked for me, like I like being in the back kind of saying, okay, I want to see if I can make this happen. Like, can I turn this idea into something? And then it becomes something. And then, University of Maryland was a really great, it was a really great playground because I transferred from University of Florida 2 years in because my mother died and we had moved back here. And I didn't like Maryland. It was like the school looks like a plantation. I was like, Dad, why am I going to slave school? What the hell is this? and I didn't particularly fit in. So I wasn't necessarily, I was a commuter student, it was all of these things. But I remember taking an African dance class, and the teacher was a white woman who had studied African dance in Ghana. And I was really, really I really enjoyed that class. And so there were two other sisters in the class. I was like, hey, we should start a dance group. So we started a student group called Dance Africa that, over the next course of the years that I was there became like one of the things that I did. And then I ended up, because I've always had multiple jobs, I had a work study thing and I got a chance to be a projectionist at the theater. So I would actually like I would tape films together. They would come in reels and I would tape them up, put them on platter systems and run. Like I was the person switching in the theater. So you would go watch a movie and I'd be up there waiting for the dots to come, and that's how we would switch over to the other side of the film. So I was doing all of this stuff because I needed to work. I needed money for my schooling. I had this interest in this dance group, and it just turned into something. And so because I had those experiences, I remember thinking there's not enough Black stuff happening at University of Maryland. There was a BSU and there was these other organizations, but I'm not necessarily, I'm not interested in following instructions in other people's directions. So I kind of was just like, I'm gonna be out here by myself. I decided that I would do a film festival, a Black film festival. So they, and because the white folks love me, they're like, oh, do whatever you want. So I ordered a bunch of films. Like I showed Blaxploitation films. Like I did a whole week of like films. And because they were old films, they were really cheap to get, and like got some money from the production people, like got $500 and like just did a festival and had no idea that it was successful because I was just doing it to do it. But when they actually ran the numbers, it was actually one of the most successful events they'd had that particular semester. And so I remember saying to somebody, I wish I could do this for a living. Like, I just love throwing things together and seeing what happened. I had no idea you could actually live like this until I went out into the world and people would ask me to do stuff. Can you put this fashion show together? Can you help with this? I'm like, yeah. How do you know how to do it? I don't know. It just makes sense to do it this way. So yeah, there's something in me that just feels like, I just think that what Black people are able to create under duress, when they're joyful, when they're sad, like when they're just bored, I just think it's amazing. And I don't think that, I think that it's being limited. The scope by which we look at Black culture is very limited. So there's a whole bunch of stuff out there that never gets to shine. And I've always been on the outside of the creative space. Like I've been told by club owners, I love what you do, but it doesn't make money. I'm like, okay, I get it. You're right. But, I'm not here to force people to drink. I'm not a promoter. So part of me finding the right words to describe what I was doing it became a necessity at some point, because if I was going to be in DC, particularly working in the nightlife space initially, a place where there's very few women, I had to figure out a way to kind of sell what I was doing. And, there are people who really supported and really got it. And there are people who are like, this is cute, but you can't come back because you're not making no money. And so, there's been a lot of knocks in the head, but the social currency at least gets me an opportunity to test it out. So even if I can't stay, they'll be like, all right, you can have this one night where nobody's here. Do what you want, but if it ain't successful, that's it. And so it's through those moments and just kind of asking like why. I mean, Harlem in Paris was a why. I had a question. I went to the Alliance Française to meet, their cultural director, and they had a Harlem Renaissance reader that I grew up with in college reading, but it was in French. And I was like, I wonder what it was like. I wonder what it was like to be in Paris during the Harlem Renaissance. And that's how that event came to be. I was just thinking out loud.
And I think that's the second lesson that Kat is sharing with us. Follow your passion.
Yeah.
Now, if you listen to Kat, and you might hear my cat, because my cat's mad at me because I haven't got her wet food, and so she has to eat the dry food, and she's a diva, and she's not happy with me right now. But anyway, what I'm hearing that I think is important for people to think about, when you have multiple passions, when you're involved with stuff, follow the passion.
Mhm.
it may or may not be part of what the capitalist society that we live in sees as money making.
Right.
But it's about you, and you can find a way, because I know you found a way, because I've been involved with activities where you had standing room only. So I know that, you know, but it's, again, social currency is one, to follow what your passion is and work your social currency and your own energy to make those things happen, and to listen to your own voice, not what everybody else is doing.
Right. Right.
um, you know, and if that means starting something that doesn't exist, start it, you know, and not be afraid to do that. Um, One of the things that I've always have to watch out for is burnout,
Hmm.
because it's so easy. And yes, yes, about your passion for Black culture at large, yeah, or something. I can't read all of it, but um, uh, I've always had to, because there was a point where I got burnt out
Hmm.
doing all the stuff I was doing, and it kind of led me to coaching, actually,
Right.
because I felt I kind of, it kind of helped me to make some transitions, because some things just wasn't working for me anymore, despite my passion.
Right.
And there's very varying stories about what that was about, um, but I also knew that I wasn't taking care of myself the way that I needed to. Um,
Mhm.
you know, that stuff catches up with you with age, you know. Engine light starts coming on after 50.
Right.
So, um, I've had to really start practicing some things, which led me to a lot of interesting adventures. But you know, I had to find a way to you know, balance, and you know, be able to find the enthusiasm for what I did. And I'm curious as to how do you avoid burnout, and what are some of the things that you do for self-care?
Okay. Um, so full transparency, I think if you're multi-passionate, at least in the way that I am, burnout is inevitable. Partly
Yeah.
because there are times where I don't even realize that I'm pushing as hard as I am. Because I'm just caught up in deadlines and things got to happen, and it is what it is. Um, I am an herbalist as well, so I
That's
one of my
right.
passions.
I
So
forgot about that. Forgot about that one.
shout out to Stroke Apothecary. We started an apothecary in the middle of a pandemic, so yeah. On top of that, I co-own an apothecary. For me, once I learned about, so when I quit I used to be a trade executive, and then when I quit my job to actually, I figured out if I could figure out a way to get a full-time teaching position, I could continue to do the creative stuff that I wanted to. Because for me, it was never a side hustle. Like people were like, nope, it's not a side gig. It's actually what I do. And so now, first and foremost, don't allow people to talk down about this, your little ideas, your little whatever. You have to really kind of push back when people want to reduce what you're doing to something that happens on the side. But once
Mm.
I quit the job, much to my father's chagrin, who was like, can't you just pretend to not be well mentally and just get disability? I was like, Dad, no. And he's like, that's not an option. He was like, well, I remember telling him, I was like, Dad, I'm going to quit my job. For what? Why? Why are you quitting your job? And I was like, because, I really feel like I need to pursue this thing. And so can't you, like, he's really concerned. And I said, well, Dad, it's a quality of life issue. And he was like, quality of life. What
Quality
is
of
that? What do you mean? He was disgusted. Like he was like, something is wrong with you. You've lost your mind. Um, my father, and now keep in mind, my father now, when he went to the longest night, was like beaming, like in true like
I watched him. I
big
watched him.
top form. I was like, oh, now it's cute. I showed him some of the artwork that I did that I put in the show. He's like, you're an artist. And I want to be like, hey, hold on, partner. Remember when you wouldn't let me be great? He's like, you should be selling this. I was like, oh, so now you're my manager. My father is hilarious, but he was worried and he was like, I don't think this is a good idea. Like, I don't understand, but I was like, I have to do it. I have to see. And it really meant understanding that my life was going to change a bit. I did do some things, like I bought a house before I quit my job. I had taken a bunch of workshops to understand how equity works and all that. And I was like, well, if something goes left, I'll figure it out. But when I realized I could pay my mortgage if I just worked part-time at a damn bookstore, I was like, well, shit, there's no reason not to figure this out. I started adjuncting, and before you know it, I had like 4 schools. I was adjuncting between 7 classes. So I was burning myself out. I definitely was. But I started working at an herb store because I needed money. And it's there I started to learn things about energy and how to use certain herbs to kind of mitigate some of the things that I was dealing with. I was able to cure myself of some things, some autoimmune stuff that had waylaid me during grad school. I was able to actually get it under control. And so, when you get stuck on how something's going to happen, you just won't do it. So, whether God protects babies and fools. So I was like, whether or not this makes sense, I was like, I got to at least go see. I have a master's degree. I'll figure it out if it doesn't work. But, putting on a suit and going to sit in an office with people who were questioning what my hair was doing, who always had some interesting things to say. I was working in the plastics industry, and there's a lot of racist shit that happens in the plastics industry. And, white men coming up to me and talking to me any kind of way. I was like, you know what? I'm not built for this. Like, this is not important enough to me, I was loud, with my bangles and my patchouli oils. I was confusing these people. They were like, oh, what is happening? And I was just like, whatever. And at the same time, I left as a director. Like, I actually did quite well. And if I had stayed, I probably would have, but I was like, yeah, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do, like, this is stupid. And part of what I had to do was kind of remember who I was in all of this. Remind myself that, it can't, like, whatever happens, I got to at least try. Because our mothers went from their father's houses to their husband's houses. My mother never lived on her own. She never had her own apartment. She never knew what it was like to live with your girlfriends and have these experiences. So she never had that kind of freedom. So sometimes when I was sort of nervous, I'd be like, well, mom would say, just do it. Because my mother was very much, go live your life and go do these things. And so part of the energy of that I was walking with was like, my ancestors got me. And if I fall, get some iodine, clean up the knees and keep it pushing. But we got to at least go see. And so, and as an oldest child, my father was also concerned that I was setting a bad example because he was like, this is crazy. But it was really important for me to try. And so the burnout did happen. I remember I did a show. I bet a lot on this show. I bet so much on this show being doing well that I used my mortgage money for that month to pay the artist, and the show tanked. And so I didn't have mortgage money. I was a new homeowner, so I didn't understand how utilities worked. I thought I'd been paying a certain utility, and I wasn't paying a certain utility. So at the same time, they cut the gas off, so I had no heat for 3 months. I had no heat. I had a little hot plate that I was like making my bath water in. My dad had no idea, because my dad had made it really clear, like, this is a terrible idea. He never said, I'm not going to help you, but my ego and my sense of self was like, I can't go ask him because I don't want to hear, like, this is why I said whatever. So I figured it out. And so there was burnout. There's always going to be, I think it's not fair to lie to people. If you're going to have these multiple passions, you're going to burn yourself out, because oftentimes the deadlines are all meeting at the same time. So one of the things that's happening now is I have a new client who is opening up this private guest house. And so I've been working with this client since November. We just did an event last night. I'm super exhausted because, there's that, but I had to talk to students this morning, and I have papers that I still need to grade. And so a lot of it, depending on the passions, they will run into each other. So, you just kind of, for me, what needs my attention the most? Okay. I've also learned to, so I've accepted that sometimes shit's going to be whack. Sometimes you're going to make yourself sick. And that's just, you got to figure out your schedule. And I had to learn because I'm excited. Like, let's do it. Yeah, let's do everything. Da 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 da. Because I'm chasing the culture. And so sometimes I would put myself in situations where the deadlines were like literally on top of each other. But what I've learned is that as you progress and as you build social currency, you also build a little bit of power. So, you
Mhm.
know, I'm a professor and I make my own syllabus. Like I get to tell the students when to come, when not to come. So, you know, I build in workshops so that I can breathe. And that means I can stay home that day and talk to them remotely. Or, you know, with certain, with my buoy students, you know, we did a project instead of a paper. Let's do a project. Let me show you how to, you know, negotiate the bar. Let me show you how to, you know, create set, scenery for your event. So it it really started to become less stressful once I solidified a full-time teaching position, because teaching for me is a passion. But it also is a built-in sort of, you got breaks because of the summers and this, that, and the third. And I've had to learn, you know, that you don't have to work all the time. Like I had to really learn that, you know, I don't have to be stuck in this lack spiral of, oh, what if this happens? What if that
Right,
happens?
right,
I
right.
just do what I need to do. And I
Mhm.
have to tell you, Sharon, like in terms of just trusting the process and letting your ancestors do what they got for you, what has happened is like money just gets thrown at me now. Like, hey, we need you to do this. Here's some money. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, let's do it. You know, or we need you to do this. Here's some money. And what you're asking me to do, I can do relatively easily because my social currency is so wide and
That I
broad.
can,
I don't have to spend a lot of time trying to figure out who
who I
needs to
need
do
to
what.
talk to.
I can literally, in the space of an hour, contact all the people I need and say, hey, this is happening. Are you available? And by the end of the day, the heavy lift of who's going to do what is done. And so that again takes time. But what it has taught me is that that is one of the ways to avoid, or need not avoid, but to mitigate some of the long-term damage of burnout. Because there's the physical burnout, but then there's also the spiritual and energetic burnout. There are a lot of bitter people. There are a lot of people that when I was coming up on like that U Street space who are really bitter about how
Yeah.
things turned out. And it's partly because collaboration wasn't always part of the way folks like to move. Some of it is about not having that advisory committee. Like there's a group of women that if I'm tripping, will be like, come here, you're tripping. Let's have a conversation. Who will check me? Who have permission to check me? And so I'm never too, like, I appreciated the compliment about being grounded. Like that is something that I worked really, really hard to do. I don't ever want to be somebody who's so far removed from everything that I think I can treat people any kind of way. And so having people in your life who actually believe in you, not necessarily your talent or your gifts, but believe in you, is another way that for me the burnout has kind of been mitigated. Because I had people who have been like, so I done seen you 5 times this week, what are you doing? I have
Mhm.
friends who text me, have you drank water today? I call them my surrogate husbands, who will be like, hey, I'm gonna make dinner, I'm gonna need you to come sit down and eat dinner. And so I have this community of people who literally keep me lifted. I'm not like, my awesomeness is really because I have a whole community of people who genuinely want me to win. And if I'm tripping, they let me know. If I get sick, like I've had a couple of health scares, the family, like, you know, they came around and they did what they had to do to make sure that I was okay. And so the multi-passionate pieces has gifted me with so much love. Like it's really powerful to be in a space where people are not afraid to say to you, yo, I see what you're doing. I love it. Keep going. Like I don't believe in having haters. Like, and if anything, I don't need to know who they are. Like my
Right.
tribe of people, they love me like unconditionally. Like, okay, if you messed up, something happened, they're like, let's what do we need to do to fix it? And so as I continue to grow and create, that's kind of what I do. And then one of the things in terms of those sort of self-care space, I actually have learned, this was a hard thing for me to learn, but one of the things that I learned, and I would tell folks to kind of learn this early, is I have learned that it's okay to sleep. Like it's actually okay to like get rest. I removed this idea of laziness from my vocabulary.
Uh-huh.
I actually schedule once a month now. I schedule weekends where I don't, like, if I go sit in a hotel or if I go somewhere, if I just sit in my house, I do that. I spend a lot of time at home. Like people think I'm out in the streets a lot, but I spend a lot of time at home, and I've created a home that kind of does what I needed to do, which is kind of keep me energized. So I I find that creating time before you need it has been really helpful. So I've become better at saying, I'll get back to you. Because I used to be like, but now I'm like, I'll get back to you. I'll look at my calendar, I'll take it all in, and I'll make decisions around, okay, this is what I want to do. So, like, for example, the announcement, I've been asked to direct an opera.
Oh, oh my gosh. When?
In
Where?
May.
And
So,
sorry, this
yes.
is my, and let me excuse my audience. This is my usual reaction. You know, I kind of forgot myself, but that's usually how I am with
I
people
love
that
it.
really feel good about. And I mean, and it was so funny. I was just talking to one of my line sisters about, I want to see an opera. I want to see a good opera. And
Well,
we were just talking back and forth. And then here you are talking about that. And that's one of the reasons I'm like, oh,
so it's going to be in Pittsburgh. So I'll be in Pittsburgh for 2 weeks in May. It's going to be at
okay.
the August Wilson Theater. And it's an adaptation of an opera called the Songs from the Uproar, The Many Voices of Isabel Earnhardt. So there's going to be a Black woman in the lead. It's an amazing
Okay.
story. And because of my social currency, Kimberly Douglas, who is the artistic director, sent me an email and she was like, hey, I'm going to be on this project. I think you should, I'd like for you to direct it. I was like, all right, let's go. It wasn't a question. She knows who I am. She's like, I want you on it. I was like, let's go, let's do it. And so I've been researching and learning about libretta and composing and, being able to, we're gonna bring this whole Black woman experience to life. And it's super exciting. But that's why that social currency is so
It's so
very important.
important.
Because what happens is people, when you're multi-passionate, if you're not careful, you will silo your community based on your passions. And so then people will only think you do one thing. And so my
And
community
that is
has
so
always had, yeah,
That is so true. I've experienced it, but I've gotten to the point I just ignore it now, and I just push past it. But you're right. When you don't connect with, a variety, and I'm beginning to connect with other audiences.
right.
Particularly, I've moved into poetry.
I
So this is one of my things that I'm, dabbling in. I'm doing a poetry thing on Sunday. I don't know if I think
I saw,
I
yeah, I did see it.
yeah, I know, but I know she probably got stuff going on. But anyway, I just let folks know, because,
Right,
for a while, people were kind of like, you could feel it,
right.
like, we just like you over here. We like the little pretty collages and, a lot of
Mhm.
people don't even know I do the coaching.
Right.
That's, they don't know. And,
But I'll
but
say this, Sharon, that to me, particularly when we're talking about Black women, some of that comes from Black women always being told they're doing too much. And so
absolutely.
what I had to learn was that sometimes I was the reason why people didn't know all the things that I did because I felt bad about, oh, I do this. I felt like I was bragging as opposed to saying, no, this is all the stuff that I do. And so the conditioning around how Black women show up and how we're constantly sort of making ourselves small is one of the reasons why people will forget, won't even think to ask you to do something because you yourself have somehow figured out a way to silo. And so
Silo
one of the things that I tell people all the time, let the streams cross. Like I invite everybody to everything now. And I don't pretend if I was teaching, I wouldn't wear my bindies. I would kind of just show up and da da da
yeah,
da. And I remember
that.
somebody was like, why don't you wear your bindies when you teach? I was like, well, because she was like, you better be all that you can be. And so I was like, you know what, you're right. So my students know that I do these
You
things
are
now. So
absolutely
it
right.
allows for the streams to cross. And that's how then your social currency could grow because they will pigeonhole you and tell you
Just
that this is your lane and you can only be in this lane.
and the fact with a lot of people tell me like, well, if I do some, people always telling me I'm doing everything and I'm doing too much, and what you're saying is, and that's probably the final point we need to say tonight, because we could talk all night, that,
Yes.
right? Um, is that if that's who you are, be who you are and share that,
Yep.
you know, because, like you said, the haters, you can acknowledge the haters or you don't.
Right.
Some people will hate you because you like to do all kinds of things and you are willing to do those things. Being a person that is an introvert, I've had to all my life, fight that.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to show up like this. Oh, I need to show, and I think, and I have to admit, this year is one of the first years I decided that people just going to know everything. I
Mhm.
mean, they're going to see the different sides of me. This
Yep.
is how I'm going to show up. If you don't like it, you don't have to like my pictures. You don't
Right.
have to make my art. You don't have to like my poetry, but that's who I am. And, if you want to get to know me and connect with me, you need to know that all of these things are a part of me. And
Yeah.
that's one thing that I love about you, Kat. You've always been, I never even picked up on the silo side of you. I've
Right.
always picked up on the multi-passionate side. And, I think that's part of the reason why we've connected so well through the years is because you always saw when I moved into other areas, and you were just like one of the few people that was like, oh, okay, she's doing that, cool.
Yeah,
Where
it
other
made sense
people,
to me though. When I saw the poetry thing, I was like, oh, okay. I thought you'd always been a poet, so it didn't surprise me. I was like, okay, I'm glad she. I was like, oh, I'm glad she's performing again. Like I knew that you performed. I didn't know if you performed or not. I just assumed that you did. So I was like, oh, she's performing. That's fantastic.
but
I was
I
like,
think
that tracks.
I think it's because on a soul level we know each other. We
Right.
know each other well, and I'm not going to get into all that woo woo stuff, but this is not the first go round.
Right.
So, and I think that's, you connect with people that are on that level and they know you, they know that it's just a part of your soul connection, but you put that outside. But, God, Kat, we got to get together in
Yes.
person and I'm going to try to make that happen. I've been working on a book. I don't know if I told you.
Good.
Yes, I'm writing a book. And I might need to get you involved with that too.
Okay. Love to
One more
support.
thing for you to get
I
involved with.
tried and I had to put it down. That thing was stressing me out. I was like, ooh,
Girl, I've been trying since 2018,
yeah.
but I'm on a roll now. I
Is it a
got this.
memoir?
No, this is going to be an inspirational book for midlife creatives.
Oh, I love
People
that. We
want
need
to,
more of that.
yeah, I know. We need something to, especially our generation. We're Xers. So, like I said, a lot of us are trying to get back and trying to we found a way to do it, you and
Right.
I. No, but a lot of people have not been able to do that.
Yeah,
And
it's unfortunate,
you can
and I think
tell.
something like what you're working on is very necessary. I think that I we're not our parents' middle age. I honestly feel like
No.
everything up to this point has just been like study. Like I really am like, all right, put me in, coach. Like I'm like, let's do it. Like I feel ready to do things, and so I do think having some because I realized I was telling someone I was like, we're a blueprint and we need to document it. We need to make sure because
Do.
while
Because
the,
that younger
the Gen
generation,
Zers, yeah, the Gen Zers I love how fearless they are. They, no disrespect to any Gen Zers on the chat. There's a certain lack of discernment and soft skills that I think is missing because they've never had to be analog the way we have. And there's just some
yeah,
things I feel like we don't need to know about you. And so I do think that there's something powerful that as Gen Xers that we can offer everyone because we really don't share our lives the way other people do. And I think that there's a lot of really important nuggets about, a way of being. Like, what does that
yeah,
social currency actually mean? My follower count means absolutely nothing to me. What means everything to me is that if I send out an email, hey, I'm doing this, people will come out of the woodworks and be like, hey, I don't know what you're doing, but I'm coming. Okay.
yeah,
And they trust me. And that's to me, that's something that I'm very proud of. And I think that we don't talk enough about social currency. We don't understand the importance of it. And so even with my students, I try to teach them, they have to collaborate with each other. I was like, you don't know, this cohort might be the cohort that you all help launch each other. So you have to be willing to, be graceful, be generous and graceful with each other and learn how to ask for help. Don't be like us waiting until the last minute. Like learn to ask for help in the beginning so that you don't get burned out or that the burnout is a little bit less because you got people that you can depend on. So yeah, there's a lot that we could, rage on about. But I love that you're writing this book. Congratulations. I think
Thank
that's
you.
awesome.
Thank
And
you.
I can't
Thank
wait
you.
to like hold one in my hand and have you sign it. So yeah, I'm
Yeah,
excited.
we might even be a part of it. So we'll see how that goes. But so anyway, author is going to be part of my name down the road here very soon.
Makes sense.
All right, tell people how they can find you if they don't know
Okay.
you. And I've shared a lot about you and will continue to share, but just tell them, oh, when is the whole opera thing going to kick
So the
off?
opera is going to be May 19th to the 21st in Pittsburgh.
Oh,
This is
really?
the
That's
first
soon.
time I've actually publicly said that this is happening. The contracts are signed though, so they can't take it back. I'm doing this.
Okay.
Like, I'm doing this now. I don't want to sign the contract. It's a done deal.
Got
But yeah, it's exciting. I am looking forward to that experience. And one of the things I am going to do is I'm going to chronicle those 2 weeks because this is definitely the furthest outside of the scope of my creativity that I've ever sort of ventured into. And so I'm looking forward to kind of just, sharing. Like I'm going to be doing like a blog every day on the Little So site to kind of just say, hey, this is what happened today. So if you follow me at Cat's Corner Co on my IG, you click on the bio link, there's a whole bunch of links there where everything, including adding yourself to the newsletter, you can do. Thank you all for listening. Sharon, thank you so much for always you pull me into these amazing spaces. And I was raving about that talk we did at that space a
Yeah,
while back. It was
for
really good.
Women's History Month.
Yeah, it was
Women's
Women's
History,
History Month.
that
Yep,
was a serious thing. I want to try to do that again in
that was
another
fantastic.
year or so.
That was
We're going to
fantastic.
have to do that, and we'll just have to. We'll have to get together and talk.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try to see what I can do to hit Pittsburgh. I wish my brother was still living there because I would really definitely hit his crib to do an overnight over there. But I'm
I
still going
got
to try.
an Airbnb. So I told folks it'll be, a whole African family reunion. We'll all be in there like on top of each other. But I'm more than down to have to host people. And if it's like 6 of us in there trying to make it work, then so be it. I don't care.
Well, I definitely want to say congratulations. Thankful for you to do this and to announce it on this.
You got
And
the
we're going to,
exclusive.
yes, I did. And I'm going to repost this on my IG and on YouTube because I think you dropped a lot of gems tonight.
Thank
I
you.
hope that those of you that listened or listened on the replay can get a lot from this. I am glad that I'm still part of your social currency.
Actually, I need to follow up with you because I mentioned you to the sister that I'm doing the exhibition for in September at the Sandy Springs Museum. So I do have to follow up with you about something.
Okay, and yeah, we made that happen, and we're still looking out for each other. But I just want to thank you for being on this. Love you madly.
Love you too.
Um, and yes, I will hit you up because I want my commission, and I know it's going to be bad, and I'm
I
putting
was
that on
looking for
my
the
altar.
perfect. There was a piece that was missing, and I finally found it. I was like, okay, so it's coming.
No, because
I'm
I know you're
inevitably going to
channeling,
get it to you before I leave for Pittsburgh.
and I know you're channeling it. So
I,
I
which is
I know
why
you're.
I was stuck because I was like, there's a piece missing, and then I found it, and I was like, and I found it by accident. So I was like, oh, it's on now. It's a wrap.
Oh, I know. I'm trusting because I know the energy and everything is coming through to you. Love you
Love
all
you too.
for being
Thank you,
on the.
everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you for turning in and for the replay. And feel free to reach us if you need us. Take care.
Bye
Ciao.
bye.